Hey everybody, it's the CC Amateur Hour where production values go to die. That's CC.
JT.
And we got a jam-packed episode today for the podcast. We got lots of things going on. Straighten the shirt. But before we go in, we need to go solemn for a moment. We need to tone it down for a little bit because since our last podcast, our family in California received and in Idaho received some very, very sad news since the last podcast. It was like a 1-2 punch. And out of respect to the privacy, we will not share that news, but we will say that they are going through some very difficult times, very, very difficult times, and our family is feeling it, and just want to send out our love, send out power, send out whatever it needs, and to remind them that hey, we're here.
Yep.
And believe me, y'all are in our thoughts. So we're thinking about you. So if our valuable listeners and watchers can take a moment to just breathe some strength for those folks, we would appreciate it.
And the same goes to anyone, because I'm sure we're not the only family having these types of issues. So anybody out there who's going through a rough time right now, we're thinking of you. You're in our thoughts. Yep. We're sending you strength.
We're sending you strength because, man, it's you got to be out. You got to be there for each other. It takes a village, folks. So just
right.
Yeah. Okay. But that's not why you're here. You're here because you're here to hear two soon to be retired full-time writers.
Almost retired.
And a month from what's today?
Today is the 25th, so
it's February 25th, 2024. So you retire on the 29th. So you're a month and a change.
And 4 days.
Yeah, wow, really close.
Yes.
So what it is you have writers of a certain age, independent publisher of a certain age, and what we do out here on our podcast is with as few brains as possible. We try to share our experience. Now, we're going to talk about the thing about success and everything, and how the value of success is maybe graded, because we picked out a fun word today. But we've still learned a few things, and we're hoping that by sharing that, that you as independent writers, or you as family, or you as somebody that does, just sort of stumbled onto us, can get something from our experience. And as always, we say that after we've done one of these things, if you feel that we're completely full of crap, which is entirely possible.
Well, it's also a matter of opinion, because everyone's experience is different. And I've talked about this on the marketing front, because I've done intensive research into book marketing, and I don't feel that a lot of those types of marketing advice, that type of marketing advice works for us. We need to figure out our organic marketing strategy. So, it's take our advice for what it is. Yeah. It's pertinent to us.
Right.
Hopefully some part of it will help either inform your decisions or maybe lead you off in a direction to be able to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. Now, what we should have done is preface that by saying what's current events, because what it is we usually start with our podcast with current events. And so the big current event, obviously, is CC's impending retirement. And then, as we said in previous podcasts, when she retires, she will be taking over the full-time marketing job for the company, which we call Two More Books. Mm-hmm. And, and then she's also the editor-in-chief, and she's also the CEO. And these aren't made-up titles, because what it is we're trying to add some structure to this, so we feel that structure lends success.
Yes.
So we're doing structure, and me, I'm just eye candy. I'm just here, arm hanger. That's my job.
You did that in public the other day too.
Didn't work out so well.
Actually, no, she was giving it right back to you.
Yeah, anyway, so but from the company point of view, I'm the CIO, CMO, and CSO.
Well, you will not be the CMO
for
much longer.
I'm the Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information Officer, Chief Strategic Officer.
Right.
And
creative staff.
And the creative staff.
Right.
So so we're adding structure to this, and we just feel that maybe this will give us a foot in the door and help us better direct our energy. So, so if you're a one-person shop, it's well, as we've been for a while, it's
a heavy lift.
Yeah. But so from that point of view, we waiting for CC to retire. From the other point of view is I'm finished with the space epic, still working on the idea whether it's going to be 2 or 3 books, and I'm doing the final big editing lift. Then I will shuffle it over to the editor-in-chief for her critical thinking review, and of course catching all the I before E's thing. And then we're going to be sending off to the editor, and we'll go from there. So hopefully we'll get 1 book out this year. I'm hoping for that. And for everybody that bought Maggie, the Maggie books, the Sheriff of Nevada and Sheriff of Nevada Downfall, I'm going to be shifting direction on that. But my goal is also to get book 3 published this year. So.
And instead of maybe 5 books, it's going to be 4 books at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Because, as JT said, there has been some shifting in the thought process of where the story is going.
Yeah.
But I think at least book 3 should come together fairly quickly because you already have the basis for it.
Yeah, so it should fly. So that'd be good news. Okay, we're going to talk about something that is something at the core, or the foundation. Maybe foundation is a better word. The foundation of every independent writer, and it's one of CC's favorite words. Last week we did one of my favorite words, dichotomy, and this week's favorite word for those of you on Sesame Street is
ennui.
And I have it right here. And if you want to read it.
So ennui is a feeling of listlessness and dissatisfaction arising from a lack of occupational or excitement. He succumbed to ennui and despair.
And I don't think that's just independent writers.
No,
I think that's and I think
a lot of people.
I think that's almost every human endeavor where you expend energy and you expend passion.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem to go anywhere. But I think for the independent writer, ennui is really, really there because
it's a challenge.
We expend so much energy, like what we talked about just a few minutes ago.
Right.
We expend so much energy, and then we feel like it's for nothing, and that's a hard rock to push up the hill. That's a big heavy boulder to push up the hill.
And I've been seeing a lot of independent authors talking about this, and maybe even some traditionally published ones too, because unless, as we've mentioned before, unless you're a big name author, a traditional publisher doesn't usually expend a lot of energy or money trying to get your work out there. So there is a lot of heavy lifting involved in trying to get people to even see your work because there's just so much of it out there. And there has been a kind of a little clip going around on TikTok, one of those memes where it's basically it's why have I done this? And then you whatever you're working on, if it's a series of books, or some people have done it where why have I done this? And then it's like they won an award. Whereas other people are like, why have I done this? And they're sitting there tearing their hair out because they can't get their book finished because maybe they do have a little bit of ennui. Mm-hmm. They've expended so much of their energy that they just don't really have anything left right now.
Yeah, it's man, it's hard. It really is. It's hard. The entire creation process is so
very
difficult.
Hard.
And then to go through the business side, because we that's how we have divided up. We talk about the creative side and the business side. Mm-hmm. You do so much work on the creative side because English first of all, but to come up with an idea and develop it and write it and edit it, and then to switch it over to the business side, to go through the processes of getting a professional editor and covers and publishing it, and then all this time and all this money, and it just sort of and you see it happen more than once because
yes.
we've published a few books and we've seen those books.
JT.
Well, you published more than one, but
I have.
But to see these books just sort of get swallowed up by the great white whale, which is called independent publishing, is just so. It's why I have stopped looking into the future. It's where when I'm writing a book, I only focus on what's in front of me, and I don't think into the future, because if I think into the future, then.
Well, and that goes back to what we were talking about previously, multiple times, the idea of success. Is success selling 1 million copies of the book? Is success having one person read your book and really connecting with it? Yeah, we'd all like to make $1 million or sell 1 million books and be able to live a little bit more easily, because things are expensive, especially when you are an independent publisher. And you would at least like to recoup the money that you've spent to create these works. But the idea, if you set your mind to that being your idea of success, then maybe you will be dealing with a lot of ennui, because it's lightning in a bottle. We've said it before, right place, right time. And just the right amount of events have to come together to make, big, what most people would consider success. Whereas just finishing the book, getting it out there, and maybe even having only 1 or 2 readers. First of all, getting the book out there, published through that whole process and releasing it, that is success.
Yeah.
Just releasing a book. You've put in a lot of time and effort, maybe even a lot of money, getting it out there, and you have been successful. So you might have to just say, that's it. I got the book out there. I'm a success.
Yep, and that's true. That's part of the whole idea, which I was going to talk about, is maybe, I don't want to use the word reset, and I don't want to say have or something like that, but realistic expectations, I think, also has to be a part of it. That unless you do have the lightning in the bottle, and there's a reason they call it lightning in the bottle, is because it's so rare. But having realistic expectations, I think, is something that you've got to start with the understanding that, even having realistic expectations, you're going to have that emotional, that emotional hit. And we have that emotional hit. We come into this podcast, we sound so perky and everything. We're so cute.
Sometimes.
And we come with energy and everything like that. But it's
during the week.
Might
not be the case.
Yeah, that's like we look at this coffee and say, I wonder how it would taste if we put a little bit more into it. But no, seriously. Realistic expectations, I think, are part of the answer to ennui, because try as you may, you are dealing with a humongous big white whale out there called independent publishing, and there's just thousands. I'm sure it's thousands publishing every day.
Well, and I've been watching movies about authors and actual authors. I recently watched one about Emily Dickinson. And she, in the movie, I don't know how true this is to life, because there's always some literary license that's taken when something is adapted. But there was a point where obviously she had been writing poetry. She lived during a time when women were really not allowed to do that type of thing. It was more man's work. And, if a woman did it, it was just like, what's wrong with you? And she was saying, I would just like some recognition before I die. And I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. It's like, we have worked really hard at doing this, and we would like somebody somewhere to notice all the hard work we've put in. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to become Uncle Steve or Aunt Barbara or somebody like that, we talked about last week. But just having someone say, hey, I enjoyed this. This was a good book. And maybe telling somebody else. And that's the other part of it. People may buy our books. We've had a few sales. Getting reviews and getting them to tell other people about them are a whole different matter, because maybe they're not quite, I'm guessing we probably don't have what you would consider mainstream thoughts and mainstream books. And this is very true of our youngest daughter, who's also an author. She decided she did really well successfully financially for many years and burned out because just the grind of she was releasing books like every 6 weeks or so and making money at it, but then decided that for health reasons, for mental health reasons, she couldn't keep doing that because it was a constant thing, and it was not mainstream. She would never have gotten traditionally published, even though she tried several times and did manage to get an agent. So there is an element of that, I think, in all of our writing, in our family at least, that we are not going for what the most popular trend of the moment is. We want to write what appeals to us.
Which was last week's podcast. Another part, I think, that is what might be helpful to combat, though we can never actually eliminate ennui, is becoming part of a writing community.
Yes.
Whether it's something simple, like, for example, Cece and I are both part of the Northern Nevada Writers Group on Facebook. And we see on there that they are always having gatherings and write-ins and things like that. And this is something that we're going to participate in better once Cece retires. But being part of a writer's community, because writing can be a very, very solitary endeavor. Now, some people are lucky to have a partner. If she had a good partner, things would be good. But, but being part of a writing community might be helpful on that, and getting that feedback and that human companionship, because as we've said in the past, writing is a very solitary endeavor with a public outcome, and when you're trying to combine the two, it can be daunting and lead to that challenge. And so joining a writing community might be part of the solution, and it's one that I'm personally looking forward to, because I'm not really that kind of I'm shy.
But I have actually had my own writers group in the past when we had a Borders Books, if anybody remembers that. We used to have meetings there, and putting together a group like that can be a heavy lift, but once you get the people together, it kind of takes a life of its own. Everybody takes a little bit of energy from it. They bring their experiences and their expertise in whatever area. Some people are better at proofreading. Some people are great editors. Some are great at critiquing, providing constructive criticism versus the kind of criticism that will just stomp you into the ground and make you want to quit writing altogether.
Yeah, and that's
what we're looking for, is the constructive criticism, the people who know what stresses we're going through. They're also feeling the same types of things that we are, even though we might not always write in the same genre or something. It's still supportive.
And it's difficult because for writers that criticism, and we got to remember that criticism is a positive word, and that's difficult for some people to put their mind around, especially if they grew up with troubled childhoods and they think that criticism is a situation of this their entire life.
But it's wrong.
But criticism actually is supposed to be a positive experience, because criticism is supposed to help you grow. As we frequently say in this podcast, feedback, constructive feedback makes us better writers, and it makes us better people. But, saying that you're writing just a bunch of crap is not constructive criticism. But saying, hey, your crap could be better if you considered it from this point of view. Now, that's something that's useful. And that's stuff that's in feedback that we're seeking all the time. And
it's very subjective.
Because,
what one person considers, you have the academics who will be, Oxford comma, for example. Use it, don't use it, whatever. We will die on the Oxford comma hill.
Use it.
But you get the people who are so much into the nitpicky nuts and bolts of writing that they're kind of missing the point that the story has to be organic and flow. And just because there are literary and grammar rules doesn't mean you always follow them, because sometimes for the purpose of your story, you don't want to follow them because it plays into the story.
Yeah, but what you're talking so much is about the technical stuff.
Yes.
I'm talking about the idea, the motivation.
Right.
The stuff that when we did our English writing classes, that the English professor said, well, the reason that the whale was white is because it represented, and it's like, and then we hear from Melville, who said, no, I just made it white because I wanted to stand out in the ocean so they could see it easier.
Well, and I was reading about someone else who was talking about foreshadowing in a book.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time we foreshadow things. Did you post that?
Yeah, I posted that.
So it's like, you don't realize that you foreshadowed something until you go back and look. It's like, oh, I didn't realize I did that.
Yeah.
That was clever of me.
Yeah. But that sort of constructive criticism, sorry, English, second language. Constructive criticism is what we need. And foreshadowing is an example of that, because if you're going to do something, interesting with a character, sometimes you just can't spring it on people, because you need to foreshadow it. Because what am I trying to say here? Because people, as they read the book, they're forming the picture of the character in their mind, and then if you suddenly make them have it grow third hand, you've completely blown you've completely blown the experience, the reading experience. Sorry, I know what I'm trying to say. I just can't say it.
If you haven't laid the foundation basically for your character or your story, and then you just throw something that's totally random in there,
right?
Like take a major left turn out of the blue, you're going to lose your readers,
right?
Because it doesn't make sense.
Right, and and so we're going to take it back to the podcast, and then this is what we mean by constructive criticism.
Right.
And this constructive criticism, take it back to the podcast, is part of being a writing community.
Yep.
Receiving that constructive criticism about, hey, why did you do that when you didn't say this was going to happen, and you blew up your character and you took the reader out of the book.
Right.
And so being part of a writing community, whether it's even a small Facebook group or a face-to-face or a big thing, can only help as long as you gird your loins.
Yes.
Going into this experience, because sometimes sometimes writers, we don't like it when people attack our baby.
Well, and that goes back again to the podcast for the idea of ennui. The writers group can be a supportive way of getting past that feeling that I can't finish this book because, what's the point, basically? I'm going to throw it out there and nobody's ever going to read it. So why am I putting myself through this? So having that supportive community can help you get through ennui. And you've been talking about that a little bit yourself with your space epic, that you've gone through so many iterations of rewriting this, the 3 versus 2 books, trying to decide where to split it, decide what story elements, making sure everything's cohesive.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of like step back and go, I have put so much of myself into this now, I don't have anything left. And then you fall into ennui.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this thing is, not to get too far down that road, but since you brought it up, this thing has been, this thing started during lockdown, and it's 2024, so just to give you a small quick hint, it used to have killer space robots in it, but I took those out. Okay. So what have we talked about? So let's try to package this up. So we talked about ennui, which is the challenge for every writing, because not only it doesn't attack the creative source and the creative font which our books come from, but we talked the challenge about dropping books into the tsunami of independent publishing. And then we talked about ways that could help us bolster us up, like joining writing communities, realizing what else did we talk about?
Well, all the technical aspects and constructive criticism, and all of this actually helps feed into the maybe refilling you creatively, because sometimes constructive criticism, you take a step back and it's like, oh, that's an excellent idea, and that can fix this other problem in the story too. So that kind of thing can really feed into that idea where you just don't have the creative energy anymore. It kind of refills you.
It's honestly, it's difficult to frame and resolve ennui, because it's different for everybody, and the solution is different for everybody. And sometimes there's no solution, because, I define solution as what's the answer to 2 + 2? 4. That's the solution.
Right.
But ennui and really feelings in general, sometimes they just can't.
It's challenging.
They can't be solved.
No.
They just can't be solved. They just exist for what they are. And what you have to do, and I don't want to say what you have to do, but sometimes you need to find that's the same thing. There's a middle ground.
Right.
There's a middle ground between being functional and just sort of sitting there. And you gotta, and I keep saying you gotta and you have to, you mean to, but there has to be a middle ground where you have to go forward, because
where you push forward.
Because folks, you need to write your book. because your book is so valuable. You may be assigning it less value as you go deeper into the process, and you may feel because it hasn't been read that it isn't valuable. But all of that is not true. There's two people that we know well, and we have been trying to convince these folks to write books because their stories are so cool, and for no other reason. It's a heritage. It's a legacy.
Right.
And their stories are so fascinating, and we really, really think that if for no other reason to leave something like this to their children and grandchildren would be good. But a book all books added to society gives us something to debate, something to discuss, and something that we can use to start as a lodestone to improve society.
Well, it provides a broader perspective because you may read something in a book that you've never personally experienced. And that was my case growing up. I grew up in some very rural areas, and you may have found this as well, that reading books when you're in a very insular community expands your worldview, and you learn that other people in other places do things differently, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just different.
Right.
Different cultures, different locations, different jobs. There are so many things you can learn about reading books, watching movies also, but really for our purposes we're talking about writing books. And it's, maybe you're not going to have a popular book now, and unfortunately, as I mentioned Emily Dickinson earlier, is like really after posthumously, it was when she gained most of her popularity. That may be the case for you too. And just at least you're putting something out there that has the potential to move a lot of people in the future, and it leaves a heritage.
And we have an example of that. We have a very exciting book project that we're going to be working on in 2025 that speaks to this directly. And we're not going to go into details right now, but the project, which I'm pretty amped up about.
No, I'm enjoying this.
Okay.
We've had some very fun discussions about this, so we're excited to share it with you in maybe next year. So after we get these 4 or 5 books out of the way, then to work on this project is going to be really cool. But it speaks to the fact of leaving a heritage, leaving a legacy, and this book, if it comes to light, will be pretty much fun. So I guess what we're trying to say is, hang in there. The hours are long, but the days are short. Or the years are short, or whatever it is, the days. And we know that we know firsthand what it is to get stuck in that sense of ennui. Yes.
Just open up the manuscript and type a few words, update your word count, type a few words, update your word count, type a few words, keep that cycle going.
Yep.
You're doing great, you're doing fine, you're doing forward. If you've published a book, fantastic, you're great. If you're in the process of doing it, you're fantastic, you're great. If you're just opening up the manuscript, typing a few words, updating your word count, you're fantastic, you're great.
Yep.
Just keep going.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep going.
One of my favorite quotes from Galaxy Quest, and if you're a Galaxy Quest fan, you probably know exactly what I'm going to say. Never give up.
Never surrender. Boom. Okay, I think that's good for now. But as always, we think that we're maybe full of hooey. That's another favorite word, full of hooey. So what are your thoughts on it? Reach out to us, let us know what you think. We always say this, constructive feedback makes us better people. It makes us better writers, makes us better podcasters. So if you have any ideas of how we could do anything better, please let us know. Is there anything else you want to throw out there?
Well, we talked about community, and that's what we're trying to create here is a community. If you have no other outlet, if you're struggling to do this kind of thing alone, please feel free to reach out, contact us through our website, and we'll be happy to try to respond as much as we can. And, maybe we'll help you find a local community. Who knows? But if nothing else, we'll at least reach out and say, hey, you're doing great.
Yep, absolutely.
Keep it on, and we're behind you.
Yeah, we are. Okay, we'll just close things out real quick by saying welcome back, Cody Bellinger.
Oh,
whoa, Cody.
Cubbies.
And Rhino, we're thinking of you, bro.
Yes.
We got your back, man. Okay, y'all take care. Next week's podcast will be something we make up as we go along. Like we always
Maybe
do.
another fun word. Who knows?
Okay. But until then, you can find out everything about us by going out to our website at www.carsonhume.com, where you can find our blog posts, our podcasts, and everything else, and links to our fantastic books.
And moving forward, there will be a lot more interaction on various social media platforms. So go to our website to see where else you can find us, and I'll be keeping those updated probably a lot more often moving forward, starting in April.
Yeah, we're rock and roll time, folks.
Yep.
So until then, over there's CC.
And over there's JT.
Y'all take care, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Love you lots.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.